Welcome to Knut Arranges Love on Top by Beyoncé. I've previously gone through sort of the whole arranging process using Leave a Light On by Tom Walker. However, I thought it might be more useful for you guys to just see me arrange a few more songs and just have me explain each step of the way. So I chose to do Love on Top because I remember it's a good song, it's quite fun. It's the sort of song I can imagine that a choir would want to do. The choir I'm going to be writing for is Knut's Community Choir, which, if you remember from one of my earlier episodes, is this fictional choir that I made for the Leave a Light On arrangement. So I don't remember exactly what I said back then, but essentially it'll be sort of a normal community choir. It's a soprano, alto, baritone choir because we don't have enough men, as most choirs struggle with. It's mostly like adults between maybe like 30 and 60, and they're okay. They're not like a high ability choir, but it's kind of the sort of repertoire that they would like to perform. And this is a choir that would use a piano accompanist. So let's move over to my workstation and get started with arranging Love on Top by Beyoncé. The first thing I'm going to do is to listen to the song. The first step is always to learn the song, really get quite intimate with it. I already know Love on Top a little bit, but I might just remind myself. It's been a little while since I've listened to it, so I'll just listen to it. And what I'm listening out for here is are there any important elements, any important things happening in the background, counter melodies. Just have a listen and see what's there. I really do like this song. It's a lot of fun. Okay, I just have to say, so I'm watching the music video, and one of the first thing I'm noticing is she has like 6 male dancers who are like doing backing vocals, but if you listen to the track, it's only female backing vocals. I think that's really funny. So some of my initial thoughts here are, this is a Beyoncé song, obviously, and she does sort of bring a lot of character to the song. She's a very characterful performer, and so it is going to be very important to try and capture that part of the song. What I tend to do is I try to write out the melody exactly as it's performed. Now that can take a long time, and for this kind of song, pop music, it's very syncopated. It has little runs. It has, a lot of detail. But if I want to capture the element of the song, that is something that I'm going to have to do. But it's also useful for songs that you maybe don't know that well to go down that route, because it means that you will have to familiarize your song with this, yourself with the song, and you kind of almost get it for free as part of something you'd have to do anyway. Second thing I'm noticing is that the production, all pop music has really, really high production value, and the production is a very intrinsic part of this song. It's got this retro 80s sort of vibe. It has, synth-like horns, it has the synth bass, and that's sort of what she's going for. And so it's kind of limited. You can't really present production when you're arranging for choir in the same way as you could in a studio. You're going to have to find what, elements that can be translated onto the voices and preserved are worth keeping, whereas there is some stuff you can't really do. Like, I couldn't put those synth horns in my arrangement because I'm not writing for synth horns. But then it's really important to then think, right, what part of the song is transferable? What can I put in my arrangement that's an integral part of the song that I can realistically achieve? For this kind of music, the bass line tends to carry a lot of the feel. It's very active, it has the groove, it gives you a lot of the information about the style. So I suspect I'm going to be writing out this bass part exactly. Now for this Knut's community choir, that is going to go in the piano part. So that means I can write it quite in quite a detailed way, while still trying to be kind to the piano player and not give them something that's super difficult. But that can be preserved as a way of then keeping the style the same. Now, the next thing I'll want to do is to listen to covers of the song, or specifically a cappella covers, and see how other groups have approached doing a version of this song. Now, I may find something that I'll want to copy, I may not. It's just good to do your research so that you don't kind of get stuck in this one track of the original. And that's, I mean, obviously the original is very important, but for some songs, there will be cover versions that are, very popular and have sort of successfully transformed the song in some way. So that's what I'm going to do next. Let me just see what I can find here. Okay, so the first version I found was sort of a transcription a cappella arrangement. It has, a lot of the same elements from the song. It has like a few moments where they've changed stuff, but it's kind of very faithful to the original, just sort of recreating all the stuff with voices. This is, a microphone arrangement. So what I mean by that is they're able to do stuff like the bass player can do very like virtuous? Do very like high skill, let's go with high skill, very high skill singing, because you don't have to worry so much about creating a loud sound because the microphone does that work for you, and it creates that sort of studio sound. It's like close right up here, like if I do this. I'm gonna have to keep in mind that my community choir that doesn't exist is what I would consider then an acoustic choir, where microphones aren't really used. So I'm not going to be able to recreate some of those effects that they employ in this arrangement because they are achieved by using microphones. That being said, I mean, it's a very nice arrangement. It sounds very clean, very well produced. I'll put a link to it. I would consider this kind of, mostly transcription based. So what I would take from this is probably kind of what I would take from the original. I'm going to see if I can find any arrangements that change things, a bit more significantly. Oh, wow. Okay, so the second one I found was an all-men's choir with dancers. It's really camp, but it's quite fun. This actually would be closer to what I would then do, because this is more of an acoustic choir, and they kind of use more of melody and then a bit of counter melody, which I like because it gives everyone something fun to do. What I would have to, of course, this is an all men's choir, and the arrangement I would be writing would be SA baritone. So I couldn't very well nick what they have here, but I think it's this would be closer to what I would envision an arrangement of this song. I think it's definitely got some good stuff in it. So I'll link it. You should watch it. They've got like dances, and it's really quite camp, as I said, but it's a good old time. And yeah, I'll just look out, find one more, and then I'm gonna sort of talk about my findings and decide how I'm gonna progress. Okay, so the last one I found was an all-female choir. It looks like sort of a high school choir. It's you should watch it. It's a good example of how the arrangement they have is quite good, but they don't really look like they enjoy singing it, which is a shame because It's a good arrangement. It uses this thing which I like, which is that you do a bit of unison and then you break into harmony, then you go back in unison and break into harmony. I just might take that for my arrangement. Now, obviously, this is all female, so I'm gonna have to work out probably a different key. I'll get onto this when I do sort of my summary. But yeah, it has some good stuff in it. I really do. I just wish that they would smile and look a bit more happy. It's Love on Top. It's like the most fun love song, and it has 4 key changes. How can you not smile? Okay, let's talk about what I'm gonna do then. So, what I gather is Love on Top has the melody, absolutely has to be preserved. And I'm gonna have to find a way of giving the singers the best chance at achieving the right timbre. It's a belty song, so it does kind of have to use higher range. My community choir, I would reckon, is not that high ability, so I might have to do a compromise here, but we shall see. It's a song that covers a really wide range, and the key changes don't really help with this. Now, someone like Beyoncé can pull it off because she is an amazing singer. My community choir I imagine, are very, energetic lot, and they will do it with great pizzazz, but I don't think they're going to be able to sing it quite as widely as Beyoncé. So I'm going to have to work this out. This will be part of the next step when I start writing out everything, because deciding on the key for this song, the initial key, is gonna be it's very important to get it right when the range is this wide. The next step for me then is going to be writing out the melody and the chord symbols. This is just this is the office section of the arranging process. This is just writing out the melody and writing out the chord symbols. It takes time, and it just involves listening to it over and over, trying to work it out and then checking if it's correct and then move on. And you just do it for the whole song. That's sort of how I work. I find it's useful for me because I often find that I need to preserve the melody as close to the original as possible to capture the performance. But also, if you've, for instance, been commissioned, it's a useful way to save time because the transcription process means that you're going to be listening to the song a lot, so you learn it while you transcribe. I'm also going to write out the chord symbols and the bass line. So all of this transcription stuff is something you can practice. It's tricky when you start, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. I've kind of got an advantage when it comes to the harmony because I used to play in a big band, so this song uses jazz harmonies, and so I'm kind of used to picking out notes and harmonies. That might not be the case for you, but it can be learnt. It's all about practice. There's software you can use. In my university, we used one called Aurelia, which you can just do lessons in, and it's the more you do it, the easier it gets. Right, well, I'm gonna go and just zoom through the transcription and I'll talk about what happens next. Okay, so I've transcribed the melody and the bass line and written out the harmonies, as chord symbols, that is. And through doing this, already I'm starting to think, right, how am I going to make this work? Now, I already mentioned that the range of the song is very extreme. It goes up to top B, right at the end, and it also goes down as low as a low G, low alto G. So that's 2 octaves and a third. So clearly I need to choose the right key. Also, because I've decided that Knut's community choir is an amateur sort of not very skilled, to put it that way. I need to make sure that they will be able to create a good performance anyway. And it's not a good idea to arrange for the choir that I want to have. I need to be realistic and think, right, these guys are not going to be able to sing top B. So I will definitely have to put the song down. And I think the key changes are important. Part of what makes Love on Top such a fun song is that it just keeps going with the key changes. Like normally you'd have one. They just say, you know what, we're going to go all in. 4 key changes. And so I think I should preserve those. I think I will want to put it down maybe so that the top note at the end is a third down. And I might put it as a solo. So a high G sharp. There, I'm going to assume that there will be a solo soprano that can do that. And because it's so high, it's probably going to be heard, so it'll be fine. My only concern is the low Gs here, low G, A flat. Though I don't think those notes are important enough that I can't change them. I think I might actually do maybe either some block harmonies or just like move these up so that it gets well distributed. I am thinking, I want to get that alto sound in the verses, absolutely. But I'm just going to be creative about it so that the lowest note effectively is going to be maybe a B in the alto going down a third, so that'll be like a G sharp. So that should be a great low note for the altos. And I can also then put the melody in the sopranos, and if I can sort of tease a bit of, belt-like sound out of them, maybe. But also I'll put it in such a range that it's not going to sound terrible if they just have to, tilt and do a classical sound. It's just you gotta work with the choir you have, or the choir that I imagine that I have in this case. So yeah, I imagine this is going down. So just select all of it. I'll put it down a minor third. There. So it starts in the key of A major. And then I think it's going to be easier for them. And it's also going to be possible for the men to get in on the action, because I'd rather not put them higher than a C sharp. And these cool little backing parts here, they say, love hurts, it's going to take a little work. They're great, so I want to make sure I keep them. So now, second consideration is this da 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 da. That keeps going throughout the whole song. That kind of alternates between being played by the guitar and being sung. So because it is sung and because it is like quite a nice driving thing, I'll want to keep it in, but maybe not the whole way. I think I can just about, like, this piano part, I can just about get away with it because a lot of these notes fall on the same beat. But it is something that requires a bit of groove and will have to be like practiced probably. I'm not a fan of creating really difficult piano parts so that the piano player has to struggle. It's the piano player has to kind of be able to follow the singers if need be. Like it's the less brain power the piano player has to put into what they're playing, the more brain power they can put into making sure that they're accommodating the singers in the best possible way. But I'll just decide on what I'm going to do while I'm working. And yeah, so I think that is... a lot of this isn't in the right... Like, I put this in the soprano part. I'm not going to have the sopranos sing down to, low Bs and Fs. That's just... I needed to write it in somewhere. And it's just... I'll just put it here for now. Same here as well. Like, the men are not going to do this. Like, this would be fine for some skilled tenors, not the baritones in my imaginary choir. I will definitely have to simplify in bits. Like, I'm not a big fan of similar but slightly different, because that just means that someone's going to forget. People like to turn their brains off and just sing. And if you let them, then you're going to make their job easier. So I will, in some cases where you have similar phrases that change slightly, I might just like do the same one twice. Much as I've now spent all this time transcribing and try to keep it true to the original, I'm not married to this notation. Like, I will easily divorce it if it makes the performance easier. So, yeah, repeats are likely to happen. I already know that most likely the pre-chorus and the first pre-chorus and chorus are going to be repeated for the second pre-chorus and chorus, because I don't need to write new material for it. It's just, it saves time. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this score. So the next thing I'm going to do is just arrange it. And I will just explain what I've done and why I decided to do so. All right, I think the arrangement's pretty much finished. So let's have a look at what we got here. So if we go from the start, I decided, because if you can avoid having to have that moment when someone has to give the note, which usually wastes time in concerts, don't start with voices coming in immediately. Now, in the original, Beyoncé does come in from the start, but I don't really think that's necessary. So I just have the piano start. I kept this nice little line because I think it's funky and cool, and I think it's just about, with a little bit of practice, I think this will be fine for the piano player to do. And then I just have the voices come in smoothly on some nice little chords, and I let the men or the baritones, do the line here with the ladies, soprano, alto. There could be men in those sections, or non-binary people, I don't know. So sopranos and altos, they sing the little synth line here. I changed it slightly to accommodate for the chords. There are some points in the original where there's clashes happening, which are fine because of the production. With this setup, I had to change a few things, particularly when you have this passing chord here, that F. There is frequently something clashing. So I've changed, like even here, I just made some long chords instead of keeping the line going with this F sharp, for instance, which, as far as I could tell, was in the original, but you couldn't really hear it because the production masked it. That's not going to be the case in this setup, and so I just have to change it a little bit. Right, starting with altos, they are pretty low, but they should be heard. Nothing else happening here. Bit of going into harmony, and then back to just altos, and then going into harmony. Then I decided, right, it's time to let some of the other sections have a piece of the melody. So I thought, okay, good time for the sopranos here. And then the original track has some ooze in the background, so I just made some ooze in the background with a little bit of harmony here, plus this little love hurts, which comes in. And then I let the baritones take over the melody for the second half of the pre-chorus, just to, have some variation and give everyone something fun to do. Going into the chorus, I stole this thing from one of the videos we looked at earlier, where it starts it's in unison going into harmony, unison going into harmony, unison going into harmony, etc. And I just decided, right, keep the track here, bass line and the little guitar bit. And so you don't really need more than this. This will be quite fun. If you leave the chord symbols on, that also means that if there's a guitarist at the gig, or someone else who can play, they can just read the chord notation and just fill out the sound a bit. So I'd say leave that on. Right, chorus is kind of very predictable. It's all monophonic pretty much, with bits of unison and then bits of harmony. In this post-chorus bit, the baritones go back to the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Very sexy. And we could have a dance routine here, perhaps. And the sopranos, altos do the little interjections in block harmonies. And this is kind of in an okay range for them. And I thought it's kind of cool to have it. One would probably have to do a little bit of work with them on tone if it's a group that doesn't normally perform pop music. But I'm going to assume that my choir is kind of, they're okay with doing pop music, so I could get them to give it could get that sound out of them. Oh, come on, baby. That kind of sound. That'll sound good, except not like I just did it. Here, going into the verse again, I kind of decided that, you know what, let's just keep it in the altos and just like have the sopranos and altos do a little bit of harmony. Whatever. I don't need to make it too tricky here. I did change this note from the synth line because we ended up with a tone clash here, which was a little bit too spicy for me. So I made it a bit more vanilla by keeping it on that A. It's kind of a backing part where the rhythm is, you know, as important as the pitch. And in this case, I thought, right, well, if I keep the rhythm, then the fact that it's a different pitch doesn't really matter. Right, and that's, you know, quite similar to the first verse, really. There's here a bit of harmony, and the baritones have the melody, then taking over, which is then taken over by the sopranos because they go up to high A, and baritones don't like high A's. And we keep going, and this little bit, which is quite nice, I think, just have the sopranos and baritones kind of just have this A drone with the altos doing the melody. It's going to sound quite energetic. I decided I didn't want to have a new version of the chorus here, or the pre-chorus. Just use the first one again. Like, feel free to repeat sections and reuse material. You don't have to be super clever, especially for something like this. It's going to save rehearsal time because we're like, oh, well, we already know how to sing this because we've done it before. And you just save yourself having to arrange a pre-chorus and a chorus 2 times. And so, end of the post-chorus. And the post-chorus, didn't have to do that one twice either. We then go into the key changes. And so, what's really nice about key changes, and you really get to appreciate this when you start arranging, is if you have a key change, you really don't need to rearrange anything, because just the fact that it's gone up in pitch is enough to make it interesting. That being said, this song goes a bit crazy with the key changes. So the first time here, first something I did, which I think may not be necessary, but I kind of like it, is that I set up the key change. So I have a dominant going to the tonic in the new chord. I think it's fine because the track does use this passing chord earlier, so just going back up to that passing chord and then into the new key will just help lower ability singers pitch the next chord easier. It's great to have that surprise new key change, but it's also great to have them sing it in tune and not have to worry about it. And it's all, I mean, this is all just voice leading. Make sure that the lines make kind of sense in there, like the altos here, F, F, E, F, A natural, F, and then F natural, and then ascending into the melody. That's a line that shouldn't feel too awkward to sing, even if these are like accidental notes. Right, this is exactly the same as before, except now it's up a semitone. In the next key change, I decided that, okay, we need something to change now, otherwise it's just going to be like key change, key change, key change, same thing. We've used the same harmonization 3 times, and once you've done something 3 times, it's time to change it up a little bit. So I just had the baritones do their da 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 from before, and then I just had the chorus fully harmonized. So before it was interjections of unison and harmonies. Now it's all harmonies. And there's a little thing in the track where she goes, "Baby, you're the one that I love." And then she gets a response from the BVs, "I love." And I just stuck that in the altos here. And that's that's enough. You get the rest of the effect comes from the key change, and the piano player kind of has enough just having to learn this whole line in like 5 different keys. So I left that well enough alone. It's just the same line, just up a semitone, and then I'm not, as I said, a fan of making it too tricky for the piano player, so the fact that they have a line that's just mostly just 2 notes, that's okay. What's great about this music, 80s funky style music, is that they get a lot out of a little. if that makes sense. Like, because the bass line is so active, it creates a lot of like interest on its own. You don't need these huge, romantic chords if you can have just like a funky, simple line. If you listen to Prince's music, for instance, you'll be surprised at how sparse some of the tracks can be because of how the rhythmic detail in individual lines, which fills up the sound enough that you don't need to like add loads of stuff on top. So that's why I thought this simple piano part is probably quite enough. Right, back to what we have here. Yeah, another key change, and I set it up as before. So that should feel quite nice. So that's F sharp. Yeah, so that's fine up to. Yeah, always be careful with the voice leading, especially when doing key changes, because voices are entirely dependent on lines being logical and having good voice leading. So, I mean, even if you end up having to double some notes in a chord, it's fine as long as the voice leading is good. Like, voice leading is always your number one priority when you're choosing how to harmonize the line. And then that just keeps going. And I thought by this point, we've come so far. Why not just use the same thing once again, exactly the same, just up a semitone. Now, the baritone part ended up being a little bit higher than I was thinking initially, but I think it goes up to an E flat, which is, that's the point when bass singers can start feeling a bit uncomfortable. But I thought because it is consistently quite loud, it's probably fine. You wouldn't use this song anywhere but as sort of the finale for a concert, I think. It's a very natural finale type of song because of all the key changes. So even though the baritones end up singing fairly high, they're singing double F. I think it's fine. The sopranos and altos are mostly fine. There is a chance that a line like this might have to be done as a solo with the other sopranos just singing that note instead. That is something the musical director can take care of. Or if they, if you're doing it for a group and they find out that actually we'd rather maybe split into parts, split these in two here, then okay, fine. You can do that. It's not, it's not rocket science. It's just you add another part. I mean, I could just have the second sopranos do a D flat here. For now, I think it's because it's really loud, because it's kind of the climax, and because you know that you just want to sing that high note at the end, I'm going to throw them a bone, give them that A flat, and just hope, we'll see. And then, as I like to do, you just end on a nice little unison octaves here. And yes, this is fairly high for the altos, I will agree, but it's unison octaves, and so it's fine. All right, so the next step. Now, I've been working in panorama mode the whole time. Now, the next step is to go into normal like page views. So I need to make sure this is nice and readable and, that you can see everything clearly and at a glance. So I'm just going to work through the layout of this arrangement, and then I'll explain what I've done afterwards. All right, that's pretty much the layout. One of the things that really drew me towards doing choral music, apart from the fact that it sounds great, is that you don't have to do individual parts, you just give everyone the full score. If you've ever done parts for, say, a symphony orchestra, it takes hours. It's such hard work. And then it's like you go into choir and you hand them the full score, and it's like, yes, I did this. It took me 10 minutes to fix the part. And it did pretty much take me 10 minutes. So Sibelius will mostly get this right off the bat as long as you set the staff size correctly and you use optimized staff spacing and reset note spacing. So what I had to do here was just set the staff size to 5 millimeters. Now, you're gonna have to know your singers a bit, because if you've got an older choir, they might have bad eyesight. I think you might want to err on the side of caution when it comes to older people and give them larger print scores. I will, for the scores I've given to LCV, this is usually the size. We learn a lot of the music off book, and everyone's fairly young and they've got good eyes, so it's not a problem. But yeah, you might want to make sure that you've got large print in case some of your choir members can't see very well. So the only other thing I had to do really was to just break systems sometimes. So I broke the system here. You can see the layout mark shows broken system here. And mostly everything just kind of fell into place on its own. Now you want to make sure that everything is okay. Now it takes... things can very easily slip through the cracks here. It doesn't have to be perfect. But it's always worth having a look through just to make sure that there's not something obvious that you've managed to write in wrong. But I think this overall looks fine. And yeah, again, I broke a system a couple places here for the coda. And there it is. There's not much to say really. It all just looks quite nice, and it fits on 9 pages. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole arrangement done. And there you have it. That's arranging a song from start to finish. If you're interested in having a look at the sheet music, then I've published it so you can purchase it from the link below. I would quite like to do more of these. If you want me to do a specific song, you can make suggestions. I'm not going to promise that I'm going to do every song that's suggested, but it might help me, just make some selections. Anyway, that's it for today. As usual, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already to see more arranging tips from me. And you can like me on Facebook to get some updates on stuff that I do and other projects and stuff. And also be sure to share this video with your friends if you think they'll find it useful. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Come